2 Point Hospital is a fascinating game. It's built on the nostalgic love of other theme hospital type games, including, well, obviously, Theme Hospital and Theme Park World. But the way that they have upgraded into 2018 is absolutely fascinating. Not only is there the obvious visual upgrade, but there is so much that they've added into this incredible game that I'm amazed that Sega is the distributor for such a incredibly polished and incredibly tight title. 2 Point obviously puts you in the shoes of a manager of a regular rural hospital. It feels like at the time of sort of release that the game itself was meant to be sort of filling that gap that Theme Hospital left in all of our wonderful hearts years ago, and sadly died when Bullfrog became a part of the gigantic EA conglomerate. However, at the moment, I do have to say that 2 Point Hospital, while it does fill the need and that void inside of me that I enjoyed so much as a kid, pretending to be my own little hospital manager, it does have the same problems as the 1994 classic. There's, for example, so many issues in regards to trying to find the right staff and sort of balancing your finances, and in fact, while I did find a lot of the earlier levels of the game incredibly easy, I found that the difficulty ramped up a lot quicker than I thought it would. In fact, it does actually kind of leave you with a weird kind of point where you will finish the main task of the game and then you can kind of just do whatever you want. And while it might not be fun to many, I actually found myself managing hospitals for literally hours after I'd finished the main quest. Another minor criticism I have is Kadosh, which is obviously the in-game currency. When I originally saw it, I was actually really worried that there was obviously in-game currency, but I did actually find that it is actually just something that you can kind of use to fix up the cosmetics of the game. It is a little bit annoying having that also in comparison to, I guess, real money. It does make it confusing sometimes where you see an item that you would really like to add to, say, a staff room or to a doctor's office, and then find out you don't have the right Kadosh for it. And there is that little horrible part of you which is like, man, what if I could pay $1 for, say, 100 more Kadosh? But I know that that is honestly practices I think the video game industry should move further and further away from. I do have to applaud the creators of the game for not only creating a spiritual sequel to Theme Hospital, but also updating it for 2018 standards. It's not only a very full and rich game that pretends to obviously simulate what it's like to run a business like this, but it does it with such easy controls that it almost felt like I was playing a game from the late 90s that was really just focused on having a really fun time no matter how many hours you sink into it. I do want to point out that while I think 2 Point Hospital is amazing for what it does, is that it is limited in its gameplay. There's only so much you can do as you move from hospital to hospital. The achievements and obviously the difficulty level does ramp up massively once you get into the 4th or 5th hour of the game. And while it's not a problem for people who have played Theme Hospital in the past, it might be a small struggle for new players who might be interested in this type of simulation. I mean, personally, I think that the way that the game has been run and marketed and obviously sort of pushed towards the Theme Hospital type of players, I am actually worried that new players might miss out and not be able to discover an underrated gem, even by 2018 standards. It would actually be fascinating if this game was eventually ported or released to a console, for example, the Nintendo Switch. The way that obviously the developers have focused here is more on the player's enjoyment of moving from hospital to hospital rather than having them stick to each one. There's enough variety, obviously, in each level with different types of challenges as well as illnesses for you to cure, but I think overall my biggest problem is that most of the game can actually be completed within about 10 to 12 hours, and then you're kind of wandering aimlessly for about the last 2 to 3. The point that I'm trying to get to is that it was almost the exact same problem that I had with my Burnout Paradise Remastered review, is that it's more of the same, and that isn't necessarily a problem. I think that games like this, and obviously another title I'm reviewing later this month on Rush, they fill these gaps in the market that are incredibly necessary and are so much fun, but at times I am very worried about revisiting this nostalgic past and it not moving on to new game mechanics and new ideas. Yes, the visuals are absolutely fantastic for 2 Point Hospital. While I was actually initially worried that it would just be a retread of Theme Hospital with a graphics upgrade, it actually has introduced a lot of new ideas, themes, and game mechanics. The main game mechanic, obviously, that I am absolutely loving at the moment is the idea of leveled rooms. So in the original sort of Theme Hospital, you kind of just take care of the patients and make sure they don't die, as well as build a hospital that is functional, as well as delightful for the very sick patients that come in and out of your hospital. In 2 Point Hospital, you actually try to make it look like it's the most cleanliest, prestigious hospital in the fucking world. And while that is extremely difficult to maintain, you kind of do have a lot of fun doing it. I kind of didn't exactly understand the levels or the tiers of different types of rooms at first, but once I kind of caught on, I realized that it was more about trying to use the extra items, which honestly I never really used in the original theme hospital, as an actual game mechanic rather than just a little bit of a cosmetic touch-up. The difficulty level of the game, like I said before, is really, really easy at first, and obviously you can kind of move at your own pace. And I do appreciate that in most sim games, you kind of have to go at the pace of the developers. For example, I did try, Train Simulator and European Truck Simulator 2 earlier this year, and while I did have an enjoyable time, I did kind of find myself that I was moving at more of the pace of the developers than my own. The biggest issue that I did find is that some of the difficulty does ramp up when it comes to online challenges and staff challenges. I don't really respect the staff that I hire, and I realize that makes me a very, very bad manager in terms of the hospital sim world, but more often than not, I found it difficult to increase the happiness as well as the enjoyment of the hospitals themselves. Whether it was making the experience more enjoyable for the patients, for the staff, or simply building a level 4 prestigious staff room, I kind of just didn't really want to focus on that. I wanted to unlock more illnesses, I wanted to unlock more rooms, I wanted to unlock more different types of projects and ways to sort of gain money to improve the hospital that I had. It actually would have been interesting if they had a certain mode where you could kind of tweak and focus on the different ways that you wanted to run your hospital, whether you wanted it to be staff focused or patient focused or illness focused. It actually would have been really, really cool if you could research and even create your own diseases based on the already implemented models, designs, and items that were in the game. For example, the lightheaded illness, while I found it very, very humorous and I find it very, very amusing earlier in the game, it actually would have been really cool if more people were coming in different types of associations of lightheadedness, and it would kind of be based on different types of illnesses. For example, we all recognize the common cold and flu. However, we are also aware that influenza does affect different types of diseases. If there were crossover diseases or cross-contamination, similar to that of the game Plague Inc., it actually would have been really, really cool to see what happens when you mess with different types of biology, but that may be a different game altogether. Overall, 2 Point Hospital is a wonderfully fun, brilliant, nostalgic trip that not only satisfies the simulation lover in me, but also the nostalgic kid who really just wanted to run a hospital for literally 6 months of my life. I did actually contemplate that very, very briefly in about, the year 2000 when I was playing this and The Sims back and forth. It was so weird to revisit a game that is not just extremely polished, but was built with such creativity, humor, and design that it really, really sort of brings out a delight in sort of sim games that I honestly miss. People have focused on sim games for the longest time for their realism, when I really think that for titles like this, and obviously also in the same vein is City Skyline and the Civ series, that a little bit of humor, creativity, and a bit of knowledge about the way that the simulation works goes a long, long way. So I give 2 Point Hospital 9 out of 10.